Most people spend their entire lives trying to be liked. They smile more than they should. They explain themselves too often. They seek approval from people who have done nothing to earn their attention, and then they wonder why respect always seems just out of reach. Respect rarely disappears because people are stronger than you. More often it disappears because they discover they can control your emotions. The moment someone realizes they can make you angry with a careless remark, anxious with a delay, or desperate with a little attention, they unconsciously place themselves above you in the psychological hierarchy. This is not always done with malicious intent. It is simply how the human mind evaluates strength. People instinctively trust and admire those who remain centered while everyone else is pulled in different directions by emotion. Before you can influence anyone, before your words can carry authority, before your presence can command attention, you must first demonstrate that your inner world cannot be easily shaken by external events. Most people believe confidence comes from winning. In reality, confidence comes from emotional stability. Imagine two individuals facing criticism in front of a group. The first immediately becomes defensive. They interrupt, explain themselves, and desperately try to convince everyone that they are right. The second listens quietly, considers the criticism, responds calmly if necessary, and refuses to let emotion dictate their behavior. Even if both people possess the same intelligence, observers will almost always respect the second person more. Why? Because emotional restraint signals self-control, and self-control has always been associated with strength. Human beings constantly search for signs of certainty in others. When someone loses control of their emotions over small inconveniences, they reveal that their state of mind depends on circumstances outside themselves. This creates doubt. If a minor disagreement causes frustration, what will happen during a real crisis? If a delayed response creates panic, how will that person handle genuine uncertainty? People unconsciously ask these questions whenever they evaluate someone's character. They may never speak them aloud, but their behavior changes accordingly. They become less likely to trust your judgment, less willing to follow your lead, and less inclined to value your opinions. Emotional mastery does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means refusing to allow temporary feelings to control permanent decisions. Anger, fear, excitement, jealousy, and disappointment are natural experiences. The difference lies in whether you act immediately upon them or allow them to settle before responding. Strong individuals experience the same emotions as everyone else, but they create space between feeling and action. That small pause is where discipline begins. It transforms reaction into choice. Many conflicts become larger than necessary because people mistake immediate reactions for authenticity. They believe expressing every emotion proves honesty. In truth, uncontrolled emotion often clouds judgment. A harsh message written in anger, an impulsive decision made from pride, a careless insult spoken during frustration can damage relationships that took years to build. Emotional control protects not only your reputation but also your future opportunities. Every unnecessary reaction leaves evidence about your weaknesses, and people remember weaknesses far longer than strength. Notice how individuals who naturally command respect rarely feel the need to defend themselves against every opinion. They understand that not every accusation deserves an answer and not every challenge deserves a response. They recognize that silence can communicate confidence more effectively than endless explanations. This is because they are guided by internal conviction rather than external validation. When your sense of worth depends entirely on what others think, every disagreement becomes a threat. When your worth comes from your own principles, criticism becomes information rather than an attack. There is also an important difference between suppressing emotions and mastering them. Suppression hides emotion while allowing it to grow beneath the surface. Mastery acknowledges emotion without surrendering to it. Someone who suppresses anger eventually explodes over something insignificant. Someone who masters anger notices it, understands its source, and chooses a response that serves a greater purpose. This distinction is essential because true strength is never built upon denial. It is built upon awareness followed by deliberate action. The world constantly tests emotional discipline in subtle ways. A rude comment from a stranger, an unfair decision at work, an unexpected setback, or a broken promise can all become opportunities to reveal either instability or composure. Every challenge quietly asks the same question: who controls your emotions or the circumstances around you? Those who answer with calm consistency gradually develop a reputation that cannot be manufactured through words alone. People begin to associate them with reliability, maturity, and quiet authority because their behavior remains consistent regardless of changing conditions. Emotional discipline also sharpens perception. When you are overwhelmed by anger or anxiety, your attention narrows until you can see only your own feelings. You stop observing the motives, fears, and intentions of others. Calmness expands awareness. It allows you to notice subtle shifts in body language, tone of voice, hesitation, confidence, insecurity, and hidden agendas that emotional people completely miss. The person who remains composed gathers more information than the person consumed by reaction. Better information almost always leads to better decisions. Those who seek instant respect often make the mistake of trying to appear powerful through loud voices, forceful opinions, or visible displays of dominance. Yet these behaviors frequently reveal insecurity rather than confidence. True authority requires no performance. It is communicated through consistency, patience, measured responses, and an obvious refusal to let temporary emotions dictate permanent behavior. People are drawn toward those who make others feel stable in uncertain moments because emotional steadiness creates psychological safety, and psychological safety inspires confidence in leadership, friendship, and every meaningful relationship. Words lose their value when they become too easy to obtain. Most people speak not because they have something meaningful to contribute, but because silence makes them uncomfortable. They rush to fill every pause, explain every decision, defend every opinion, and share every thought that crosses their mind. In doing so, they unknowingly reduce the weight of their own voice. The human mind assigns greater importance to what is rare than to what is constantly available. This principle applies not only to material possessions, but also to attention, conversation, and communication. When every sentence carries purpose, people naturally listen more carefully because they learn that your words are worth hearing. Silence has always possessed a strange psychological power. It creates anticipation. It forces others to think instead of merely reacting. In a room where everyone competes to be heard, the individual who remains calm and speaks only when necessary often becomes the center of attention without trying. This is because people instinctively assume that someone who does not rush to speak has nothing to prove. Their restraint communicates confidence. They are not seeking validation through conversation. They are choosing their moments deliberately, and that choice alone creates authority. Many people believe respect comes from demonstrating intelligence through constant explanation. The opposite is often true. The more someone feels compelled to prove their knowledge, the more they reveal uncertainty about whether others already recognize it. Truly capable individuals rarely feel pressured to convince everyone of their abilities. Their confidence allows them to leave space for curiosity. They understand that mystery often generates more respect than endless self-promotion. When people are allowed to discover your strengths gradually, those strengths appear more authentic and memorable. Consider how quickly authority disappears when someone cannot stop talking. They interrupt conversations, answer questions that were never asked, offer advice before understanding the situation, and repeat themselves in the hope of being noticed. Instead of appearing knowledgeable, they begin to appear anxious. Excessive talking often exposes insecurity because it suggests a fear of being overlooked. The listener unconsciously begins to value the speaker less, not because the information lacks quality, but because the speaker lacks restraint. Speaking less does not mean becoming distant or silent in every situation. It means replacing quantity with precision. Every sentence should serve a purpose. Ask yourself whether your words clarify, encourage, question, inspire, or solve a problem. If they accomplish none of these, silence may communicate more strength than another unnecessary explanation. Precision forces the mind to organize thoughts before expressing them. This habit makes your communication clearer and your presence more influential because people no longer have to search through unnecessary words to find your meaning. There is another psychological advantage to measured speech. People naturally reveal more about themselves when they feel heard. Someone who dominates every conversation learns very little because they are too busy speaking to observe. Someone who listens carefully gathers information about personalities, motivations, insecurities, ambitions, and hidden intentions. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to understand rather than impress. The person who understands others possesses a significant advantage over the person who only wants to be understood. The ability to remain comfortable during silence is itself a sign of confidence. Many individuals rush to speak simply because a pause feels awkward. They mistake activity for connection. Yet silence often encourages deeper thought. It allows ideas to settle. It gives your previous words room to resonate. A well-timed pause after an important statement can make that statement far more memorable than speaking continuously without interruption. The pause invites reflection, and reflection increases impact. People also pay close attention to those who never waste words on gossip, unnecessary complaints, or emotional outbursts. They begin to trust that when you finally express an opinion, it has been carefully considered. Your voice becomes associated with reliability rather than impulsiveness. Over time, this reputation transforms ordinary conversations into moments of influence because people expect substance instead of noise. Measured communication also protects you from revealing unnecessary weaknesses. Every unnecessary sentence creates another opportunity for misunderstanding, contradiction, or emotional exposure. Many conflicts begin not because someone intended harm, but because they spoke carelessly without considering the consequences. The disciplined communicator understands that once words leave the mouth, they can no longer be controlled. They choose them with the same care that a skilled craftsman chooses each tool before beginning important work. This approach becomes especially valuable during conflict. Most arguments escalate because both sides desperately want the final word. They believe victory belongs to whoever speaks the longest or loudest. In reality, emotional debates often reveal more about insecurity than conviction. The individual who listens patiently, speaks calmly, and limits their words to what is essential appears composed, while others exhaust themselves trying to dominate the conversation. Their restraint shifts the emotional balance without raising their voice. There is also immense power in asking thoughtful questions instead of delivering constant opinions. Questions invite reflection. They encourage others to explain themselves, often revealing contradictions they would never notice on their own. A carefully chosen question can reshape an entire conversation more effectively than a lengthy speech. It demonstrates curiosity, confidence, and emotional control while allowing the other person to participate rather than simply receive information. As your words become fewer, they also become more anticipated. People begin to notice when you choose to speak because they understand it is intentional rather than habitual. Your opinions carry greater influence because they are no longer diluted by endless commentary. Conversations become opportunities to create clarity instead of confusion, and your presence gradually develops a quiet authority that does not depend on volume, speed, or constant attention. Respect grows naturally around those whose words are guided by purpose, whose silence is never uncomfortable, and whose communication reflects careful thought rather than impulsive reaction. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is to convince people that your standards can be negotiated whenever they apply enough pressure. Human nature constantly tests limits, often without conscious intention. People observe what you tolerate, what you forgive, what you ignore, and what you are willing to sacrifice just to avoid conflict. Every interaction quietly answers a question that others may never ask aloud. How much does this person value themselves? Your response to that question shapes the level of respect you receive far more than your achievements, your status, or your words. Many people confuse kindness with the inability to say no. They believe that being available at all times, agreeing with everyone, and avoiding disagreement will make them more appreciated. For a brief moment, this may seem true. Others may praise their generosity or easygoing nature. But over time, something changes. The more accessible they become, the less valuable their time appears. The more they abandon their own priorities to satisfy others, the more people begin to assume that those priorities were never important in the first place. What began as kindness slowly transforms into expectation, and expectation eventually becomes entitlement. Respect is deeply connected to boundaries because boundaries communicate value. Imagine someone who answers every message immediately regardless of what they are doing, changes their plans whenever someone else asks, accepts repeated disrespect without objection, and apologizes for having personal needs. Their behavior sends an unintended message that their own time, energy, and emotional well-being are less important than everyone else's. Most people will not consciously exploit this, but they will unconsciously adapt to it. They begin treating that person according to the value the person has assigned to themselves. Strong boundaries are not walls built to keep people away. They are clear lines that protect what matters most. They define what behavior you accept, how you expect to be treated, and what principles you refuse to compromise. Ironically, people often feel safer around individuals with healthy boundaries because they know where they stand. Unclear boundaries create confusion. Clear boundaries create stability. Stability inspires trust, and trust naturally strengthens respect. One of the greatest fears people have is disappointing others. This fear drives countless decisions that conflict with personal values. Someone agrees to responsibilities they cannot manage, lends money they cannot afford to lose, tolerates repeated disrespect to avoid confrontation, or remains silent when something violates their principle. Each decision feels small in isolation, but together they gradually reshape their identity. Instead of being known for integrity, they become known for compliance. Instead of earning admiration, they become predictable because everyone knows they will eventually surrender if enough pressure is applied. Learning to say no is one of the most powerful psychological shifts a person can make. A respectful refusal demonstrates confidence in your priorities. It communicates that your time has purpose and that your commitments deserve protection. Many people fear rejection when they decline a request, yet those who genuinely respect you usually appreciate honesty far more than reluctant agreement. A sincere no builds stronger relationships than a resentful yes because it establishes authenticity instead of hidden frustration. There is also a difference between reacting emotionally and enforcing boundaries calmly. Some people wait until months of frustration have accumulated before finally expressing themselves through anger. Their boundary arrives as an explosion rather than a conversation. Others communicate expectations early, clearly, and respectfully. They address problems before resentment has time to grow. This approach is far more effective because it focuses on consistency rather than emotion. Calm boundaries appear intentional. Angry boundaries often appear impulsive. People naturally observe how you respond when someone crosses a line. If you immediately abandon your standards to preserve temporary peace, they learn that your principles are flexible. If you defend your values with unnecessary aggression, they may comply out of fear but not out of respect. The most effective response lies between these extremes. Calm confidence sends a powerful message that your standards are not personal attacks but permanent parts of your character. You do not raise your voice because you do not need to. Your consistency speaks more loudly than your emotions ever could. Boundaries also require internal discipline. It is easy to establish rules when others agree with them. The real challenge comes when enforcing those rules becomes uncomfortable. There will always be moments when saying yes would be easier, when remaining silent would avoid conflict, or when compromising your values would produce immediate rewards. Yet every compromise weakens the foundation upon which respect is built. People notice consistency over time. They remember individuals whose actions remain aligned with their principles even when circumstances make that alignment difficult. Another important aspect of boundaries is refusing to seek permission for every decision. Constantly asking others to approve your choices subtly communicates uncertainty about your own judgment. Confident individuals listen to advice, consider different perspectives, and remain open to learning, but they do not surrender responsibility for their lives. They recognize that every decision carries consequences, and they accept ownership of those consequences without shifting blame onto others. This willingness to stand behind one's choices creates an image of reliability that naturally attracts respect. Healthy boundaries also transform the quality of relationships. They remove manipulation, reduce resentment, and encourage mutual appreciation. People who genuinely care about you learn to respect your time because you respect it first. They become more thoughtful about their requests because they understand your priorities matter. Relationships built upon mutual respect are stronger than those maintained through endless accommodation because they are based on honesty rather than obligation. The strongest presence in any room rarely belongs to the person who demands respect. It belongs to the person whose behavior quietly demonstrates that self-respect is already firmly established. Their standards are visible in the way they protect their time, honor their commitments, decline what conflicts with their values, and remain composed when others attempt to test their limits. Without seeking approval or creating unnecessary conflict, they communicate through consistent action that their principles are not available for negotiation, and that unwavering clarity becomes one of the strongest foundations upon which lasting respect is built. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in human behavior. Many assume it is something loud, dramatic, or constantly visible. They associate confidence with dominating conversations, displaying achievements, or demanding attention from everyone around them. Yet genuine confidence rarely announces itself. It moves quietly, makes decisions without unnecessary hesitation, and remains steady regardless of who is watching. The people who command the greatest respect are often those who never feel compelled to prove that they deserve it. Their confidence is not a performance designed for an audience. It is a natural result of trusting themselves. Human beings are remarkably skilled at detecting the difference between confidence and the desire to appear confident. Someone who constantly reminds others of their accomplishments, exaggerates their importance, or seeks recognition for every success usually communicates the opposite of what they intend. Beneath excessive self-promotion lies an unspoken fear that others may not notice their value. Real confidence has no urgency. It does not chase approval because it is not built upon the opinions of strangers. It exists independently of applause, compliments, or external validation. One of the clearest signs of quiet confidence is consistency. Many people behave differently depending on who enters the room. They become bold around those they perceive as weaker and unusually submissive around those they consider more powerful. Their personality changes with every situation because it depends on external circumstances rather than internal conviction. A quietly confident person remains remarkably consistent. They treat people with respect regardless of status. They do not become arrogant when they possess authority, nor do they become intimidated when facing someone influential. This emotional steadiness sends a powerful psychological message that their identity is not determined by hierarchy. Knocks always reveal confidence more clearly than words. Promises are easy to make, but commitments require discipline. People quickly learn whether someone follows through on what they say. Every completed responsibility strengthens credibility. Every excuse weakens it. Over time, reliability becomes one of the strongest forms of confidence because others begin to associate your presence with certainty. They trust that if you accept a task, it will be completed. They believe your words because your actions have repeatedly confirmed them. This quiet reliability earns deeper respect than dramatic declarations ever could. Confidence also appears in the way a person handles mistakes. Those who lack inner security often spend enormous energy protecting their image. They deny obvious errors, shift blame onto others, or invent excuses to preserve their pride. Ironically, these behaviors damage their reputation far more than the original mistake. A confident individual understands that admitting an error does not diminish their worth. Instead, it demonstrates maturity and accountability. People naturally trust those who acknowledge reality rather than distort it for personal comfort. Patience is another overlooked expression of confidence. In a world driven by immediate results, many individuals become anxious when success does not arrive quickly. They abandon goals, change directions repeatedly, or seek shortcuts that ultimately weaken their progress. Quiet confidence allows someone to remain committed even when visible rewards are delayed. They understand that meaningful achievement often requires long periods of disciplined effort without recognition. Because they are focused on long-term growth rather than instant approval, they continue working while others become discouraged. Body language often communicates confidence before a single word is spoken. Calm movements, steady eye contact, relaxed posture, and deliberate gestures signal comfort with oneself. None of these behaviors require exaggeration. In fact, forced displays of dominance usually produce the opposite effect. Confidence is not expressed through intimidation but through ease. When someone appears comfortable in their own presence, others instinctively become more comfortable in theirs. This subtle psychological response encourages trust and naturally increases respect. Another characteristic of quiet confidence is the ability to remain calm during disagreement. Many people interpret opposing opinions as personal attacks because their identity depends upon always appearing correct. Confident individuals separate ideas from ego. They can listen without immediately becoming defensive. They ask questions before making assumptions. They remain curious instead of combative. This composure demonstrates intellectual strength because it shows that their self-worth does not depend on winning every conversation. Yet confidence also requires independence of thought. Society constantly encourages people to seek acceptance by following the majority. While learning from others is valuable, blindly adopting popular opinions often reflects fear rather than wisdom. Respect grows around individuals who think carefully before forming conclusions. They are willing to stand apart when evidence supports a different path. They do not reject popular ideas simply to appear unique, nor do they embrace them merely to fit in. Their decisions emerge from careful judgment rather than social pressure. There is remarkable power in becoming comfortable with uncertainty. Those who constantly need guarantees often hesitate whenever circumstances become unclear. They postpone decisions, overanalyze possibilities, and wait for perfect conditions that never arrive. Quiet confidence accepts that uncertainty is an unavoidable part of life. It does not eliminate fear, but prevents fear from becoming the decision maker. The willingness to move forward despite incomplete information creates momentum that hesitant individuals rarely experience. Respect is also strengthened by humility. This may seem contradictory, but genuine confidence leaves little room for arrogance. Arrogance seeks superiority because it secretly fears equality. Confidence has no such concern. It recognizes personal strengths while remaining aware that there is always more to learn. Humble individuals invite cooperation instead of competition. They celebrate the abilities of others without feeling diminished by them. This balance between self-assurance and openness creates a presence that people naturally admire. Over time, quiet confidence becomes impossible to ignore because it is reinforced by consistent behavior rather than carefully crafted appearances. People begin noticing that you remain composed under pressure, dependable when responsibility arises, thoughtful during disagreement, and disciplined when no one is watching. They observe that your actions rarely contradict your words and that your decisions are guided by principles instead of emotions or public opinion. Without demanding recognition or seeking constant validation, you create an atmosphere of certainty that influences every interaction, allowing respect to emerge naturally from the calm strength you demonstrate each day. Human beings are naturally drawn to what they cannot completely predict. The mind is built to notice patterns because patterns create comfort and efficiency. Once people believe they have fully understood someone, they begin making assumptions about how that person will think, react, and behave. Curiosity fades because surprise disappears. Respect often declines at the same time, not because the individual has become less valuable, but because they have become entirely predictable. When every response is expected, every decision anticipated, and every habit obvious, people stop paying close attention. The challenge is not to become mysterious through artificial games or manipulation, but to develop a depth of character that prevents others from reducing you to a simple formula. Many people unknowingly make themselves easy to read. They react emotionally in the same situations, express the same opinions regardless of context, and reveal every thought the moment it enters their mind. Others quickly learn exactly how to influence them. A compliment guarantees cooperation. A criticism guarantees defensiveness. A delayed message creates anxiety. A small amount of praise produces loyalty. Once these patterns become obvious, your behavior becomes increasingly easy to predict, and predictability often invites subtle forms of control. People no longer respond to you as an independent individual. Instead, they respond to the version of you they have already placed inside their minds. One of the greatest strengths a person can develop is emotional flexibility. This does not mean inconsistency or dishonesty. It means refusing to become trapped inside automatic reactions. Imagine someone insults you expecting immediate anger, but instead they receive calm indifference. Imagine someone expects you to seek revenge, but you quietly move forward without giving them the satisfaction of your attention. These unexpected responses interrupt the assumptions others have created. They force people to reconsider their understanding of you because the old pattern no longer explains your behavior. Predictability also limits personal growth. When you become attached to a fixed identity, you unconsciously resist opportunities that challenge it. Someone who believes they are always the quiet observer may avoid leadership. Someone who sees themselves only as the leader may neglect the value of listening. Someone who constantly seeks to appear strong may hide vulnerability even when honesty would strengthen a relationship. A person who continues growing cannot remain completely predictable because growth changes perspective. Every new experience reshapes judgment, priorities, and behavior. People respect those who evolve because evolution demonstrates awareness rather than rigidity. There is also tremendous psychological power in revealing yourself gradually. Many individuals share everything about themselves during the first conversation. Their ambitions, fears, opinions, plans, successes, disappointments, and personal history all become immediately available. While openness has its place, excessive transparency often removes the natural process of discovery. discovery. People appreciate what they uncover over time far more than what is handed to them instantly. Allowing relationships to develop gradually creates curiosity, and curiosity strengthens attention. Attention, in turn, often becomes the foundation of respect. Being unpredictable should never mean becoming unreliable. This distinction is essential. Reliability creates trust, while unpredictability creates interest. These qualities are not opposites. You should remain dependable in your principles, your commitments, and your integrity, while remaining flexible in your methods, your thinking, and your responses. Others should know they can trust your character without believing they can always predict your every move. This balance creates both security and fascination, two qualities that rarely exist together unless they are intentionally cultivated. Another reason people respect those who cannot be easily categorized is that such individuals appear independent. Society encourages labels because labels simplify complexity. People quickly decide who is confident, who is weak, who is intelligent, who is emotional, who is successful, and who is ordinary. Once these labels are assigned, many individuals begin living according to them. Independent thinkers resist this invisible pressure. They refuse to become prisoners of other people's expectations. They surprise others by demonstrating abilities that contradict previous assumptions. They remain open to change because they are guided by principles rather than reputation. Unpredictability also strengthens negotiation and decision-making. When your reactions become possible to anticipate, others are forced to pay closer attention instead of relying on habit. If people know you will always compromise first, they wait patiently until you do. If they know you always become emotional under pressure, they create pressure intentionally. If they know exactly what motivates you, they use those motivations to influence your choices. The moment your behavior becomes less automatic and more intentional, these strategies lose much of their effectiveness. Others must begin responding to your actual decisions rather than to predictable patterns from your past. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological forces in human interaction. People naturally invest more attention in individuals they cannot fully understand. This does not require pretending to be mysterious or withholding kindness. It simply requires maintaining enough depth that no single impression defines you. You may possess confidence without arrogance, ambition without selfishness, discipline without rigidity, and strength without aggression. These combinations challenge simplistic assumptions and encourage others to continue observing rather than assuming. An unpredictable person is also difficult to manipulate because manipulation depends upon reliable emotional triggers. Those who seek control carefully study habits, fears, desires, and weaknesses. They depend upon repeated patterns to forecast behavior. When you pause before reacting, reconsider your assumptions, and choose responses based on thoughtful judgment instead of impulse, those patterns become increasingly difficult to identify. Your choices begin reflecting conscious intention rather than emotional habit, making influence far more difficult. Life itself rewards adaptability more than rigid certainty. Circumstances change, opportunities appear unexpectedly, and challenges rarely unfold exactly as anticipated. Individuals who cling stubbornly to familiar routines often struggle when reality shifts beyond their expectations. Those who remain flexible continue learning, adjusting, and growing without abandoning their core values. This combination of stability and adaptability creates a quiet strength that others instinctively recognize. They realize they cannot reduce you to a predictable script because your actions are guided by awareness instead of habit. Your decisions reflect thoughtful judgment rather than automatic reaction, and your presence continually reveals new depths that command lasting attention and genuine respect. Respect that appears overnight can disappear just as quickly. It is easy to impress people for a moment through charisma, confidence, or clever words, but lasting respect is never built on moments. It is built on repetition. Human beings trust patterns more than promises. They watch what you do when no reward is offered, when no audience is watching, and when keeping your principles becomes inconvenient. Your reputation is not created by a single remarkable achievement. It is created by the countless ordinary decisions that reveal who you truly are. Every action either strengthens the story people tell themselves about your character or weakens it. Over time, those small decisions become your identity in the eyes of others. Discipline is the invisible force behind every respected individual. While talent may attract admiration, discipline earns trust. Talent can be inconsistent. It depends on mood, motivation, or favorable conditions. Discipline operates regardless of circumstances. It continues working when inspiration disappears, when obstacles appear, and when progress feels painfully slow. People instinctively recognize this difference. They may applaud natural ability, but they place their confidence in those who consistently fulfill their responsibilities. Reliability has a psychological weight that brilliance alone cannot replace. Integrity is equally essential because it creates alignment between words and actions. Many people speak confidently about honesty, loyalty, responsibility, and courage until those values demand personal sacrifice. The true measure of integrity is not what someone believes when life is comfortable, but what they choose when compromise becomes profitable. Every person eventually encounters moments where taking the easier path offers immediate rewards. Some accept the shortcut, convincing themselves that no one will notice. Yet the first person who notices is always themselves. Each compromise weakens self-respect, and once self-respect begins to erode, external respect soon follows. People constantly observe whether your behavior changes depending on convenience. Do you remain honest only when honesty is easy? Are you respectful only toward those who possess influence? Do you honor your commitments only when they still benefit you? These questions are rarely asked directly, yet they shape every relationship. Consistency answers them more powerfully than explanations ever could. Someone who behaves according to the same principles in every environment becomes remarkably predictable in the best possible way. Others know exactly what to expect from their character, even if they cannot predict every decision. There is also tremendous strength in honoring small commitments. Many individuals dream about accomplishing extraordinary goals while neglecting simple daily responsibilities. They speak passionately about future success, but repeatedly fail to keep promises they made yesterday. Character is built through ordinary habits. Waking up when you intended, completing tasks without reminders, arriving on time, keeping your word, and accepting responsibility for mistakes all contribute to a reputation that grows quietly over the years. These actions may appear insignificant individually, but together they create an image of dependability that commands lasting respect. Discipline also shapes the relationship you have with yourself. Every promise you keep strengthens internal confidence because your mind begins trusting your own decisions. Every promise you break weakens that trust. This internal relationship influences everything else. Someone who cannot rely on themselves often seeks constant encouragement from others. Someone who has repeatedly proven their own reliability carries a calm certainty that does not require external reassurance. That certainty becomes visible in the way they speak, make decisions, and respond to challenges. One of the greatest tests of integrity appears when no one is watching. Public behavior is often influenced by reputation, but private behavior reveals values. A person who acts responsibly only under observation has developed performance rather than character. True integrity exists when actions remain the same regardless of recognition. This quiet consistency creates an inner stability that eventually becomes impossible to hide. Even without discussing personal values, people begin noticing that your choices repeatedly reflect honesty, fairness, and responsibility. Another important aspect of reputation is patience. Many individuals become discouraged because respect does not arrive immediately after changing their behavior. They expect years of inconsistency to disappear after a few weeks of discipline. Reputation moves slowly because trust requires evidence accumulated over time. Every consistent action becomes another piece of proof. Eventually, people stop questioning whether your behavior is temporary because your actions have answered that question repeatedly. Lasting respect grows gradually, almost invisibly, until one day others simply assume reliability whenever your name is mentioned. Integrity also requires the courage to remain true to your principles when doing so carries a cost. There will be moments when honesty may delay success, when fairness may reduce immediate profits, or when loyalty may require personal sacrifice. These moments define character more than any public achievement. People remember those who refuse to abandon their values under pressure because such behavior is increasingly rare. They may not always express their admiration openly, but it quietly shapes the confidence they place in you. Discipline extends beyond work and into emotional habits, communication, health, learning, and relationships. A disciplined person understands that excellence is not an occasional performance, but a daily practice. They do not wait until they feel motivated before acting. They create routines that continue functioning regardless of temporary emotions. This consistency reduces chaos, increases reliability, and builds a life that reflects deliberate intention rather than impulsive reaction. Perhaps the greatest reward of discipline and integrity is freedom. When your reputation rests upon honesty and consistency, you no longer need to remember different versions of yourself for different people. You do not waste energy protecting false images or explaining repeated contradictions. Your actions speak on your behalf long before your words become necessary. Others begin trusting your judgment because your history has repeatedly justified that trust. Opportunities appear because reliability attracts responsibility, and responsibility creates influence. Respect no longer depends on making powerful first impressions because your character continually reinforces every impression you make. In the end, the strongest form of respect is never demanded, purchased, or manipulated. It is earned through the quiet discipline of keeping your word, the unwavering integrity of honoring your principles, and the daily commitment to becoming the same trustworthy person in every circumstance. Master yourself consistently, and respect will become a natural consequence rather than a constant pursuit.